Welcome to Virtue and Victory, a practical guide of Stoic virtues to triumph in chess and life. Adam Farr is a father, entrepreneur, aspiring Stoic, and amateur philosopher. Douglas Wong is a chess enthusiast, Stoic in training, and passionate about finding ways for us all to be at our best selves. Please welcome your hosts, Adam Farr and Douglas Wong.
Imagine you're in a high-stakes chess match. Your opponent makes an illegal move, but the referee doesn't see it. Do you call it out, or do you let it slide? Now let's take it further. What if this wasn't a chessboard, but real life, or even business?
That's a really good thought to start the conversation today, Doug. I like what Chrysippus said, quoted by Cicero. He who is running a race ought to endeavor and strive to the utmost of his ability to come off victor. But it is utterly wrong for him to trip up his competitor or to push him aside. So in life, it is not unfair for one to seek for himself what may accrue to his benefit, but it is not right to take it from another. So we need to compete fairly. And when things are not done fairly and in an equitable way, it should be addressed. Because, as Marcus Aurelius says, we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper and lower teeth. To act against one another, then, is contrary to nature. And so, as a Stoic, when we think about justice, there's some other words that the Stoics have used to describe what we mean by justice: honesty, equity, fair dealing, goodwill, benevolence, kindness. And so, yes, to answer your question, do you call it out or do you let it slide? A Stoic would tell us it must be called out and it must be brought to justice.
So I want to break this down because I think here's the question, right? I think the foundation first, we know that the Stoics, and we all should, I mean, this kind of feels like a thing that we should all accept, that justice is a cornerstone on virtue, and we want to live virtuous lives. And what you just mentioned, right, I think is really important. We owe each other to be fair and act with integrity. But in practical, applicable life, I think often we'll come into things where, why don't we just let this little thing slide? I mean, it's not a big deal. So is it really important? And what can we learn from the Stoics that says about, do we need to really call out every little thing?
I think we need to be thoughtful about what we call out and why we call it out is my encouragement. You know, when we say every little thing, like if somebody does something we just don't like, but it's not illegal or it's not unfair, then we should be sensitive to that, right? I think there's too many people calling out any little thing they don't like and holding people accountable in any crazy way, putting them on social media, whatever it is, filming them because, you know, their dog did their business somewhere they didn't like, right? I mean, it's like, on one hand, should we be calling every little thing out? I think that's a very direct no, we should not. On the other hand, if we're in business and somebody's acting or behaving in a way that they shouldn't be, or that could create issues, or that makes people feel uncomfortable, then it should be called out and it should be addressed. Is the way I would say it, right? And so I think context matters. I think situation matters. I think how matters. I think the why matters as well. There's a lot to think about. I don't know that it's a very direct answer every single time. I think it requires thought, and I think it requires a meditation to find the right answer.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And I think that is important because I know there's a lot of folks that may want to just black and white answer. And as you mentioned, it's not, there's a lot of gray area, and we have to triangulate all their virtues, and to your point, reflect on sometimes to understand what is the right thing. Um, let's talk a little bit about when you think about the Stoics and justice, because I think the first word that comes to mind for me is what's legal. Like what do you, maybe it comes from because the work that I do. What's are you compliant with the law? Is justice to the Stoics simply following the law? And then I'll take that just one step further. If it is, what if can a law be unjust?
Some deep, good questions, right? And to fully answer it, I think we need to rewind a little bit to a prior episode where we talked about what we meant by living a virtuous life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we talking about the virtues? Because as
Mm-hmm.
Stoics, we believe in living a virtuous life. And what does virtuous mean? It means excellence, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, excellent character, right? So that to me means what is, or the question I ask myself when I think about virtue meaning excellence and Adam living an excellent life from a virtuous life perspective means I am striving to become the best person I can become. And we need to ask ourselves, what is the best example of who we can become? Cicero talked about becoming virtuous with a very interesting word. He used a word directly translated as ripeness.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think ripeness, I think ripe fruit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think of a pear. A pear fresh off a tree that's not ripe is going to be hard and it's going to be bitter and it's not going to be sweet. It's not going to be a good experience. But from a fruit perspective, a ripe pear is one of, to me personally, not everyone will agree, is one of the sweetest fruits out there, and one of the most delicious fruits out there is a ripe pear. Okay. And so when we think about becoming our best selves, or an example of our best selves, we become ripened, maybe is a word to think about it. So
Mm-hmm.
moral virtue, like ripeness, is also a thing that cannot be saved up. You can't bank some virtue on Monday to withdraw it on a Friday, right? You
Mm.
just can't do that. You can only be virtuous or excellent in the moment. A minute later and you might find excellence again, or it might be too late, right? And so I'll back us up to think about why we talk about the virtues. So the question you asked is justice.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Is it legal? Is it not legal? A Stoic would maybe think of it with some of the words that I used earlier: honesty, equitable, fair dealings, goodwill, benevolence, kindness. Modern philosopher Pierre Hadot defined justice as a Stoic um, with the following: the science of what ought and ought not be distributed. So, what I will say is, as much of these virtues, justice today, that we're talking about, are down to a science, they are very much an art form, because the Stoics taught us that you can't have one without the other, that they
Right.
are interchangeable, they flow together like the waves of the ocean. They're different waves, but they're all flowing together. They're operational. They're
Yeah.
operating together, right? And so justice relates to the discipline of action, and it's much broader than just abiding by the law. A lot of Stoics would translate it even to morality, as it encompasses all of our interactions with others. So it teaches us that all people are valuable and that we are meant to work together in harmony, right? We talk a lot about the cosmopolis. Stoic justice helps us work well with others, even if they are opposed to it, right? And so I already quoted Cicero, or Chrysippus via Cicero, about the race, right? He who is running a race ought to endeavor and strive to the utmost of his ability to come off victor, but it is utterly wrong for him to trip up his competitor or to push him aside. So in life, it is not unfair for one to seek for himself what may accrue to his benefit, but it is not right to take it from another. End quote. I would add unjustly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the piece in there is it's okay to pursue what's good for yourself, but you cannot um, impact anybody else's pursuit of what's good. And I think the step further is we need to work together. And we've talked about this before. So there's a couple things that you said. One is all the virtues work together in every moment, right? So you need to be virtuous in this moment, the next, and continue um, as much as possible to live a virtuous life. Um, we also want to pursue and be at our best selves. I think that is important. It's also, I was going to say, magical, right? When you've achieved self actualization, and you ought to pursue that as an endeavor. But to be at our best, we, I was going to say want, but also need others to be at their best around us. And when I think about, so Marcus Aurelius, right? And this would be in Meditations 530. What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. So it's not just about your personal gain, it's the collective, as you mentioned, the cosmopolis as being kind of the ideal state. So I kind of thought about how would we illustrate this? Um, if we're on a soccer team together, we both love soccer or football, and I had brought a lot of water. It was a hot day. I don't have any, there's no law. There's nothing that says I need to share my water with you as my teammate or my team. But you guys are dying of dehydration, and I'm living the good life with all my water. As a team, why wouldn't I want to share with you, make you better? Because collectively we're going to better, and we're going to go out there and win the game. Where if I didn't share with you and hoarded all the water, that would be unjust, right? But there's no law saying Doug must share his water. So that was something that, like, as an easy story, maybe to help us consume this idea of justice and the
Yes.
collective.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's a really low ball, low fruit example, a good one at that.
Mm-hmm.
Exhibiting fairness towards friends or teammates who have a collective desire and shared goal of winning should come pretty naturally to most people.
Right.
Not everyone. But my follow-up question would be, what about enemies? Would you share that
Yeah.
water with the opposing team? Right? Stoicism says we should share it with the
Mm-hmm.
opposing team as well. Because
Yeah.
Stoicism teaches us we shouldn't be angry or hateful towards those who wrong us or those we're competing against, right? It's a Stoic maxim that no one is voluntarily evil,
Right.
right? And so if a person, for example, insults us or steals from us, they did it because they thought they were doing something good for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is where you get to the deeper part of Stoicism, right? This is going to be challenging for a lot of our listeners, right? But if a person insults you or steals from you or wrongs you, or they did something against you, they broke into your home, they stole your vehicle, right? Who knows? A Stoic would say, a true practicing Stoic would say, they were doing it because they thought they were doing something good for themselves or somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Epictetus says a Stoic will be patient, gentle, delicate, forgiving, thoughtful, fair, as he would towards someone in a state of ignorance, who missed the mark when it came to the most important things. He will not be harsh to anyone, for he will have perfectly understood Plato's words. Every soul is deprived of the truth against its will. So the question I'd ask people to consider is, how would your relationships change if your actions came from the Stoic understanding of justice? I think we'd be a lot better world. We'd be a lot
Yeah.
kinder. We'd be a lot nicer.
I agree. I think you asked some tough questions there, especially if somebody was breaking into your home, how would you act? And I would love this to be a discussion. I think this is where we can get really deep. Please share your thoughts in the comments, because I can already tell that there's going to be some differing views, and we can use this to reflect and meditate on in these tougher questions. I do want to segue a little bit into, I kind of started off with the chessboard, and this is a hot topic right now, which is fair play. So fair play in chess, super hot topic. It's consistently in the news, and I think this is how you can't let little things slide. It is about the collective and the best. So one is the question I try to answer. Why would somebody want to cheat at playing a game of chess, right? Um, so I lose often, but something I've said consistently is either I lose or either I learn or I win, right? So in the act of action and doing something, it's a learning moment for me. If I'm unnaturally winning against my opponent through cheating, right? And that kind of goes back to like, are we sabotage them? Are we tripping that up? What do I gain? There's no honor in that. Um, and now the whole sport, the game of chess, is under question. How many people might be cheating? How does this take away from the collective of the sport? And there's some people who choose not to participate because they believe everybody's cheating. So I'd love to explore that and open that up for discussions as well, right? You have to play within the rules for it to be a fair game, no matter what format you're playing, who's watching. I think that is also part of justice as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, and it's fascinating. And one of the things I want to do in one of our future episodes, some of our listeners have given me feedback directly of, hey, why are we, what does Stoicism and chess have to do with each other, right? And we'll revisit that, and it's a very fair,
Okay.
good question to ask.
Yeah, I love the
And really,
question.
what I want people to think about is the reason we feel they intersect so naturally is I like to sit down and play a game of chess when I have big decisions to make, because as I'm making the moves on the chessboard, I'm actually thinking about the moves I'm going to make with the businesses, with my professional life, with my personal life. I'm actually putting those decisions as chess pieces and chess moves. And so that's why it intersects, right? And we'll get into that in one of our future episodes after we get done with the virtues. But to your question, why does it matter? Because again, fairness is part of the natural order of things, right? If you look at nature, there's fairness and there's rules that must be followed in order for things to flow in a harmonious way. And when things don't flow in a harmonious way and rules aren't followed, it creates risk, danger, problems, chaos, etc. What if all of a sudden all of the stoplights turned green for
Yeah,
everybody? It would be chaotic. There would be car
100%.
accidents all over, right? Same thing in chess. What if somebody doesn't follow the rules? If one person can get away with it, why wouldn't there many other people be? And I think
Yeah.
people lean into why would somebody chess, back to your question, why would somebody cheat in chess? Because they have placed a higher priority on winning than they have learning, developing new skills, becoming better. And they
Mhm.
see losing as a failure instead of how you see it as an opportunity to get better. And that's a problem. And it needs to be addressed.
It is a problem, and it relates. So yeah, I love to get into that topic. That's a whole podcast on chess, relation to stoicism. But in that moment on the chessboard, is if everybody has the thought of why not cheat and just win for the sake of winning, then what's the point? What's the
Why are you
point of
playing?
ever? Yeah, why are
Exactly.
you playing? And you mentioned the stoplight. I think it's really good. I use this quite a bit to talk about like when systems or processes break down, and I think, and everybody might have this thought, you might have this thought, there's a very specific intersection on my way home from work that I hit every time, and people try to jump the red light, and by doing so and falling outside of the rules, um it causes chaos. It causes this intersection that I have to sit at the light for like 4 cycles, because they didn't feel it was green long enough for them. So when it turned red, they jump into the intersection. They're kind of forcing their way. Now we have to wait for that to clear, and then it takes a whole cycle. And then the other person's like, "Well, the only way I'm going to get past this intersection is if I also jump the red light." And so everybody's trying to balance and jump the red light. And we as individuals have choice, or the Stoics. So this is sometimes I get questioned when I have people in my car. I'll come up to as I see it turn yellow, I will stop. And hey, man, why didn't you just nudge in there? Because I can't be part of the problem, right? I
Right.
have to model the way and be part of the solution. You have no right, by the way. I can't, first of all, a Stoic wouldn't complain, but you couldn't make judgment if you also are doing the same action.
Yes. Maybe think about it this way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a problem solver, right? So you said I can't participate. You could if you wanted to in the
Yeah,
problem. You choose not to participate in the problem. Has anybody picked up the phone and called the city and said, "Hey, can we fix this light problem, please?" I did that. It's funny example. You and I
that's
haven't
awesome.
prepared for this. They're doing some construction down here by one of my businesses at the restaurant, and the traffic is terrible. Okay, and similar situation you described. People are queuing. They're running red lights. It's a very busy intersection. I picked up the phone and called the city. I'm like, "Hey, there's a problem at this intersection. You probably don't know about it. You probably
Yeah,
don't drive this way, whoever the city person is. Can we please make sure that anytime the 21st South 7th East light to turn south at that intersection, can you please make sure that arrow turns green and stays green for 60 seconds? It would solve significant problems, probably reduce accidents. Anyway, where I'm going with this is they made the change because I picked
that's
up the
awesome.
phone and called them. And I see it
Action.
as everybody would say, well, is that really your job, this or that? It doesn't matter if it's my job. Is it making it better for hundreds of people a day? Yes. Is justice mean take action? It absolutely does. Because by me contributing to the greater good, that'll have a domino effect. Less car accidents, less stress, less time in hospital. All of a sudden, that one action, right? And so I encourage you and the listeners, pick up the phone and call. Take
Yeah.
action. Hey, city, let's fix this intersection. This light sucks. We're always we're always stopped here. People are running this red light. It's unsafe. There's something somebody could do about it. And the reality is, the people that could do something about it probably don't even know it's a problem.
Yep. No, it's a beautiful illustration. And yeah, you kind of owe it as a citizen, right? You're living it. To your point, the person who programmed the light might not ever drive down that street,
Right.
doesn't know it's a problem.
And Marcus taught us that if you don't do something about it, somebody else will or somebody else won't. That's why we don't complain as Stoics, because the only complaining is to ourselves. Because
Yeah,
if we don't like something, then we should do something about it. Because if not us, then who?
that's right. And that brings up kind of a detail of justice. Like you can be participating in injustice by not doing anything,
Hmm.
right? And we've mentioned this before. Virtue is in the action, doing something about it. And let's use that to kind of transition over to the business side of things, right? Because I think there's a lot going on in current events, but I think we can kind of go into a case study. It's far enough in time that I think it can give us a jumping off point to have a conversation. We can bring it up to current events. When you think about businesses have to make decisions all the time. Um, some may not know this, but this did happen with Johnson and Johnson with a Tylenol crisis in 1982, and Johnson and Johnson recalled 31 million bottles, um, even though they were not required to under the law. So there was no legal obligation for them to do so, and the action that they took, very easily these type of things can destroy a brand. But instead of hurting the brand because they took the action, there was actually more trust in Johnson and Johnson, and they became a stronger brand because they did the right thing. Was it costly? Was it hard? A hard decision? I could just imagine the meetings in the boardroom about recalling 31 million bottles and having to face the public for something wrong with the product. But it was the right thing to do, and in the long term, it supported the brand. Right? We can see this all the time, not only in our individual actions but in the business world as well.
We should always do the right thing no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what it's going to cost. There's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way. And you're right. There was a boardroom decision to say we need to do the right thing. They didn't know what the outcome was going to be. It could have gone either way, but
Yeah.
they didn't care. They prioritized doing the right thing, right? And that's what we should encourage all of our listeners, ourselves, is just do the right thing no matter what, right? That's what we're asking, right? And a lot of times the right thing's the hard thing, and
Yes.
and that's okay. We can do hard things because in doing the hard things, we learn, we grow, we can improve, and things can still work out differently maybe than we thought. But just do the hard thing, do the right
Yeah.
thing, whatever that is. And just like that good example of a company doing the right thing, there's a lot of companies and examples of people doing the wrong thing, with people sitting around board tables saying, let's cut this corner.
That's right.
No one's going to know. Who's going to know? No one's going to know. Well, people always know.
Yeah.
Eventually, the truth always comes out, right? You could think about Volkswagen many years ago when they decided to create technology to bypass emissions testing in the U.S.
Yeah.
That stupid decision that I'm sure was around a boardroom table
Yep.
ended up eventually costing them billions and billions and billions of dollars, right? Really bad decision, and it should have never taken place. Just do the right thing. Put the money into the cars so they can naturally pass emissions and inspections, and we all move on with our life. But it was easier to create a technology to fool the emission testing systems. That's just dishonest. So now we've got a good example of making a good decision in corporate, and a bad example of making a good example of making a bad decision. So the reality is, all day, every day, we have decisions to make.
Yeah, and then I put in quote the easy way, right? Because there was definitely
Hmm.
effort involved to do that, and it probably doesn't seem so easy now
Hmm.
in the aftermath of the consequences of
Yeah.
making or not doing the right thing. And to your
Right.
point, justice is a guiding principle for us all, and the conversation we're having here is uh, having people reflect, think about it. Doing the right thing when it's hard, I would say, especially when it's hard, builds credibility,
Hmm.
trust, and long term success. I think where we get into problems is when we use short term goals to define what we want to do. Everybody wants the shortcut, the magic bullet, the pill, right? Those sort of things. But when we think about chess, life, and business, and the person that you want to be, the society that we want to be, it's not just who wins, but when we win the right way, the fair way, we get better.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I would encourage our listeners to think about with justice is, as you aim for just outcomes, realize that is that what you control are your intentions and the actions that come from your intentions. So focus on your own actions, and doing so will give you the best chance of reaching your goals. So
Hmm.
realize, like we always talk about, you can't control what happens to you, only what you think about it. And so have good thoughts, control your thoughts, make sure your actions align to the principles we speak about, make sure that we're contributing to the natural order of things, right? And as we do that, and we do it justly, because we're striving to live a virtuous life, things will work out. Maybe and probably different than how we think they're going to work out, but they will work out. They always do.
Yeah, appreciate that. So reflect on starting small and building up. What's one small way you can practice justice today? What's on your mind? What's eroding your peace? Let's have that conversation. Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Send us feedback. We love it. I love that question that was posed to you, Adam, about what the heck is the relationship with chess and Stoic. I'm looking forward to doing that
Yeah,
episode.
me too. It's a good answer. It's a good question, and
It's
it's
a
a great
beautiful
answer.
question.
It's a beautiful
Absolutely.
question and beautiful answer. So we're excited. We're excited.
Well, thank you, Adam. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.